All right, welcome to the NoteWorthy USA Podcast. My name is Ben Fredericks, and today, once again, joined by my co-host, Aaron Halderman. How's it going, brother?
Good, man. Good.
Awesome. Well, we're excited to be back with you. We've been pumping out these pretty consistently, which is exciting. Hopefully, y'all are enjoying them that are listening. As always, if you could share the show, that would be fantastic. Also, we wanted to let you know we do have a virtual summit coming up in September, obviously with COVID. If you're listening to this is, July 2020. And with COVID still going strong, having in-person events is a little complicated right now. So we are going to go virtual. So in the show notes, we'll be putting a link that if you would like to attend the virtual summit later in September, you can definitely do that. We're going to be diving in deep with some experts in the industry on finding inventory when it comes to notes, raising capital, owner financing, lease options, the state of the industry, and a whole lot more. And once again, we'll put some of those details in the show notes. On today's show, I have a good friend of ours, Chris Helland from Piper Capital Holdings out of Arizona. And we're going to be talking about a number of things, lease options and, where the market is at and how you can diversify what you're doing in the industry. So we're really excited to have him on. We get to see him at all the noteworthy stuff. So welcome to the show, Chris.
Thanks, Ben. Glad to be here.
Glad to have you, man. So why don't we start out, give us a little bit of your background, how you got started in the business and, all the gory details.
All the gory details. I don't know if we have time for all of that. But I am truly a small town, northern Iowa farm boy. Where I grew up at. 6 years in the Navy, got me traveling around, seeing the world. Landed here in Arizona in about 2001. Got an Intel. Went back to school, got my engineering education that they were nice enough to help me pay for. So I contributed that back to them for a few years and then left out on my own when I had the opportunity and went real estate full-time about 5 years ago. My beginning in real estate, I was a landlord of my own house. As I moved out of it, after I met my wife and we moved in together, I turned that into a rental and learned all of these things that are not good about rentals almost immediately. Tenants, toilets, late night calls, fixes to air conditioning, and all of that stuff. So I didn't keep that for very long before I moved into some other stuff. Did a bunch of fix and flips here in Arizona. That was 2011, 12, 13, when you couldn't screw up a fix and flip in that time. You could, as long as you just held it long enough, the appreciation would make up for any of your mistakes. And
you could have like a 20 or 30% delta on those deals then.
Yeah, we had one. I mean, we were over budget, over time by 60 days, and that 60 days kind of saved our bacon because we had so much appreciation in that short amount of time that it covered the extra expenses.
That's awesome.
So, yeah, all kinds of good stuff. When things started to tighten up a little bit is when we formed Piper Capital Holdings, and I do lots of stuff. Piper Capital Holdings is primarily a mobile home dealership by Arizona definition, but we run it like a brokerage. So we use the real estate model. We've got multiple salespeople that work for us, and they're licensed as salespeople for manufactured homes, and they help private individuals list and sell their homes. When we first started that, we got our license so we could do fix and flips on mobile homes in parks because they're considered personal property. And so you have to be licensed in the state of Arizona as a dealer in order to purchase a single mobile home if you intend to resell it. And there's a lot of confusion with some of the gurus and the traveling educators they say that you can buy 3 or you can buy 5, but there's this huge thing in the statute about intent. So as soon as you buy it with the intent to resell it, you need to have that license. So 2015, Intel, they do the 7-year sabbatical for all their employees. It's a really, really cool little benefit of working there. And so 2015, I was due for my sabbatical, and I timed it right around when my daughter was being born. So I took about a month and a half of paternity leave went back to work for a month, took my 2 months of sabbatical, tacked on a couple of weeks of vacation. By the time I was ready to go back, or my time was ready to go back, we had around 18 manufactured home flips in process. Wow. And I had to call my boss up, my manager up, and I said, "Hey, Doug," he's like, "Hey, Chris, you all ready to come back? We're excited." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm too busy, man. I can't come back to work." And he thought I was kidding. So they finally convinced me to come in for an exit interview, and every department head that was there was trying to convince me to stay, and that what I was doing was too risky and everything else. But, ever since then, it's been me waking up to, get my daughter out of bed, or maybe she gets me out of bed. So the freedoms that I got are definitely worth the risk, I guess you'd say, of going full-time on the investing side.
Sure.
That's awesome. And so you mentioned something interesting there in terms of selling a mobile home in Arizona in that market, which made me think, because while I bought mobile homes, as properties, and we'll either flip them or owner finance them. Do you have to have a license let's say you buy one mobile home, do you have to have this license you're talking about in order to sell that property on an owner finance note?
Well, if it's on personal property, if it's a rented home in land in a park, technically yes.
Wow.
A way to get, I don't want to say a way to get around that, but if instead of selling that on a note, if you did a longer term lease option, really a lease does not constitute a sale. But again, you get a little bit of gray area, because there is some things written in statute that certain length options to purchase and other things can trigger the consideration that it's a sale, and that you would have to have the license in order to do that transaction.
Okay.
So, and each state's different. I know Arizona, because that's where we've been doing ours, and I just went and did another test. I picked up another brokerage per se. I'm helping out a park owner. So I went through and redid the testing again that we had to do in the first place to get our what's called a D8 license to sell homes. So now I have a D8 and a D12. So I got to renew some of those statutes and look at some of the changes that have happened in the last 5 years. And it reminded me of a few things that I'd forgotten along the way. So it was maybe a good opportunity to refresh myself. But
I love it when the government gets in the way of business. It's always my
I know, they're so helpful.
Yeah.
Now, there's a few things in there that you can tell that they were a little old, that they need to be updated, some dollar amounts that trigger different things and stuff like that. But primarily, so that's what we do on the Piper Capital side, but primarily on the stick frame or brick, the land side of real estate. Now, we've moved more away from the seller finance and into that long-term lease option, like I mentioned a little bit on the mobile homes. And so we've done several of those, probably around 30 of them in the last couple of years. And that's, I guess, the easiest way to concatenate what we do into one subject is affordable housing. Whether it's mobile homes in parks, mobile homes on land, 55 and older, all ages communities, or the long-term lease options, it's all in that affordable housing type of realm. We don't do any of the higher end stuff. We have, but we don't do it anymore, just because, with the affordable range, with that B class type neighborhood, people are either moving up into it or they're moving down into it, depending on what the economy's doing and where we're at in the cycle. So I think right now, with the COVID and everything else that's going on, it's going to be even more important as lending tightens up. Kevin, I was listening to Kevin Shortell last night. He was on a networking group that I'm involved in, and he was talking about already Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac have said they're not buying ARMs right now. They're not buying adjustable rate loans. The low credit score stuff is gone. The low down payment stuff is gone. They're not buying any of that. So that's going to create a huge opportunity for us that are doing the alternative finance and some of the creative stuff. It's going to open up a whole bunch of markets for us.
You bring up a really good point, Chris, and this is like, one of the things that why we wanted to have you on to share some of your experiences. I think a lot of people are trying to figure out what exactly their next plan is or their next move. I think there's a ton of uncertainty. You have a lot of subject matter experts and, both on real estate and on the note side. And they're not even really doing the business. They're, saying, hey, we're investing in gold and, some of these other alternatives because we think inflation's around the corner and the dollar's going to crash and, rates are going to go up and, housing prices are going to go down. And so I think especially now, it's tough because we're so inundated with, I think, a lot of misinformation in mainstream media. I personally subscribe to a lot of paid newsletter subscriptions and various economic reports. And, they're all saying, that pretty much the same thing. Like, now's the time to adjust, make a pivot, figure out what you can do on the investing front that's going to provide good, stable cash flow with an emphasis on that. And, regardless of, what particularly happens, with the economy and, all the unemployment that we're facing, people are still, what I like about affordable housing is it solves a number of problems, but one of the things it does provide is an opportunity for people that, can work jobs, with employers that are still hiring, so a lot of your retailers like, Walmart, Amazon, Target, your fast food chains, people can work there and still afford to pay, $400, $500, $600, $700 a month, on these asset types and properties that you're talking about. And I think, so you're filling a need there, yet creating an opportunity on the investing front. And so that's really why I wanted, Ben and I were talking about who we should be having on over the next few weeks and what models that are actually working and will continue to work and outline that. And so we're excited to have you kind of share the model that has been working for a while, will continue to work, and breaking down a waterfall, if you will, and how people can, take advantage of the opportunities that are there rather than just sitting on the sidelines. And so that's really what we're trying to do to bring together. So we're excited to have you, share with, your experience and, hopefully open up some of our listeners and readers' eyes to what they can do as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And to your point, that long-term lease option, it's a proven, it's a tested model. The mentor that I learned that from has been in the business for over 30 years. He's literally done thousands of deals. He's had over 2,000 that either fully paid off or cashed out on their option after their term. And yeah, people always need a place to live. I like the blue collar stuff because typically you're looking at multiple wage earners, multiple incomes in a single household, sometimes multiple generations. And it's always good for us as the investor, but it's good for the family too, because they've got options. And another thing is that the types of jobs, I'm just going to do a real quick comparison, right? To a blue collar to a white collar renter, is a lot of times in those higher income families, there's only one income earner and they're a high income earner. So if they lose their job, it's going to take them a while to recover. It's going to take them a while to get that job replaced with something else that's equivalent. Where on your blue collar stuff, the laborers, if you will, truck drivers, nurses, things like that, they lose their job. They can replace that income much, much easier than what a white collar can. And so that's another reason that we target them. And a lot of times they need the type of help that we can do, the long-term lease option. That doesn't mean we don't qualify well, right? We qualify, even tighter than Dodd-Frank standards, which has been kind of it's a bad word in the industry, but it helped fix a lot of problems that were created a few years ago. But the qualifications for us have never changed they've always been higher than what the federal guidelines are for income and ability to pay, other than the credit aspect, because the whole credit system's kind of screwy in its own right? The more credit you have, the more ability to dig yourself into debt, the more likely you are to get a loan.
Well, you talk about a good concept. I mean, we're really in a debt where, just families are crushed and beholden and slaves to debt. Credit not very good. They're kind of enslaved to those things. And, typically what happens, to your point, the higher wage earners, the more money you make, the more you spend, the more debt you incur, the more your expenses go up. And so when you all of a sudden, let's say you're making low six figures and that goes to half of that, you can't afford your $300,000-$400,000 home anymore. You can't afford two BMW car payments.
Right.
You can't do that. And so I think that's, again, going back to opportunity and where things are going to go with our economy. I mean, aren't we almost at 50 million unemployment? And that's across the board. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's way up. It's way up. The new applications started to spike. I saw that on Kevin's information last night. They started to spike almost immediately in April, new claims. And there's a whole bunch of things that are going to shake out when that government kicker, that federal kicker, drops out of unemployment too. But I feel like I kind of got a little off track from where you wanted to kind of go with this, the opportunity. And what we do, I talk about the people, I've talked about the properties a little bit, but what we really do is we help the really busy professional people that know that they want to be in this market but don't have the time to go investigate it and learn the models and do it for themselves. And we do everything that we do by partnering up with them.
Okay.
And we'll do one of a couple of different models. When we do our buy price or when we do our purchase model, it's either a cash purchase or it's a leverage, just like you would with your own personal residence, right? And with interest rates really low, like they have been for the last few years, we can help bump an investor's return a couple of points by giving them a bank line of credit or a loan on a house, just like what you would on your own personal residence. And so if the investor wants to spread, say they've got a couple $100,000 that they want to invest, even in a market like Phoenix, where a good home that fits this model is somewhere between 175 and 200,000 purchase price or valuation. But you could do, one if they wanted to do an all cash placement, or you could do basically 3 to 4 if you wanted to do a leverage model. So it helps spread that risk around a little bit more. You got multiple properties, multiple streams of revenue, and then you get a couple of point kicker on the placement.
Are you doing any non-recourse? So your IRA investors out there that work with you, are they getting any leverage with some of the non-recourse lenders?
Yeah, one of the bigger lenders we work with here in town will do non-recourse.
Okay.
Typically, you're looking at 25% down instead of 20, and maybe a quarter to a half a point higher on the rate, but they will do the non-recourse.
Okay. Yeah. So, that's a great, that's a great strategy too. So I like that.
And then also it varies depending on what market we're in. Like we've done, you guys know, we've done a lot of stuff up in the Midwest where maybe the home values are only worth 40 or 50,000. Big banks aren't going to go there. They're not lending there. They haven't been there for a long time. So on those, it kind of pushes us into that cash model by no other option. But that we can make that money go a lot further. Again, we're still looking at 3 to 4 properties for that same 200,000, multiple streams of income, multiple tenants.
So if you talk about the people that you bring into these properties to sell to on a lease option, what does that typically look like in terms of the borrower? Like, are you going through that entire process that you would if you were going to mortgage them the property, or are you looking at them just strictly as a tenant? Hey, consistent employment, they haven't been evicted? Like, what are the standards that you typically try to shoot for there?
We shoot for a pretty high standard. We set the bar pretty high compared to a regular rental, because we really want them to have the pride of ownership and the feeling like that property really is theirs to take care of. I've got this just phenomenal story. I picked up a subject to property, which I don't know if you want to get into subject to today. We can do that a little bit too. Back in around April, right at the beginning of COVID, and I was really worried about what was going to happen. Am I going to be able to show this place? Am I going to be able to get somebody, in there? And had just a fantastic experience with the seller. Got that property deeded over to me. Kept the lending in place that was already there. That one's up in Iowa, so the taxes are a little bit higher. PIT on that one is just right over $1,000 a month. And I got a lease option tenant in there, resident in there in less than 2 weeks. And even the property manager that I had working for me up there, she called me up after it was done. And she's been running apartments and regular residential rentals for years. And she was so excited. She's like, we need more of these. That was so much fun being able to show this house to these people that are moving in there with their family. And they're already talking about the things that they want to change, the painting that they want to do, yard improvements and things like that. So when I'm evaluating somebody, that's probably number one, is that mental perspective more than anything about the qualification process. Are they excited to have this home for their own? Do they want it for their family long term? If they start asking me things about who's gonna change the light bulbs and who's gonna come unclog the toilet, that's not the mentality, right? That's your regular rental mentality that we're not looking for. And so we don't say that we have homes for rent. We have homes available for deserving families that want to be a homeowner, is really the way it's kind of put out. But we do, yes, evictions, no evictions, minimum of 7 years. Credit score, I'm not worried about, but we pull it and look at it because I want to make sure that they're not an abuser, basically, of credit. And I've seen some of that. Lowest credit score I've ever seen was a 373. And that guy was working hard to get it down that low. It was an effort. It was multiple applications every single month for everything you could possibly think of. If he would have worked a little bit harder on the opposite side of that, he probably would have had a phenomenal credit score. So we didn't qualify him. What else am I looking at? We do criminal. We'll look for felonies and things like that, just a normal landlord would do. And that ability to pay. Key is ability to pay. We do the normal 3 times rent for gross income. But I want to see, especially right now in where we're at, I want to look a little bit more at the type of income that they're on. If we've got multiple people in the family that are in the hospitality business, and that's where their income is coming from, I'm going to probably dig a little bit deeper into their reserves and see what they can, see what they've got available, because that's a world right now I'm a little bit worried about the future of. Does that answer your question, Ben?
Yeah, totally. So, probably the biggest questions that we get in terms of people that, come see us at Noteworthy events are, how do I find deals? How do I fund deals? Those are usually like the big things, right?
Yeah.
How are you finding your deals typically? Like what avenues are you using to bring in inventory?
I've got a few different ways. We still do postcards. We do door knocking if we're local, not asking people if they've ever thought about selling their home. So we get some seller finance and some subject to deals that way. The other great thing about this model is you don't have to get a huge discount. You don't have to be buying way under market. And there's a lot of properties that are on MLS that this will work for right now.
Why is
that?
Well, explain.
Because we're so much more focused on the spread than what we are on the app side. So a flipper, by the time you take out your profit, your rehab, your cost of holding, your reserve, and your cost of money, you need to be buying stuff still at 60 cents or less on the dollar. where I can go buy a $175,000 house, and it's worth $175,000, I can get a PITI of around $750 a month, buying that property with 20% down, and I can rent it for $1,650 a month, or put somebody in there on a lease option for $1,650 a month. And we contract with our residents to take care of all the nuisance maintenance, so we don't have that 10% expense that you usually see on a residential rental. We do self-management, so we don't have the property management 10% fee. And we don't really have to worry about a vacancy factor because they're in there for the long term. It's not a short-term churn, and they're going to take better care of the property because it really is their own. So even if they did leave, a lot of times we get a property back that's in better condition than what it was when they moved in. So we don't have all that cost of repairs. So some of your biggest hitters on your expenses for a rental, true rental, we don't incur those. And so we're looking at the spread between the market rent and the PITI, plus we have a reserve, a little bit of a reserve in there. But that pretty much all becomes profit at that point. And we do a split. We do a split with the investors that we partner with.
So let's play a little bit of devil's advocate here in terms of, buying a property at retail, because, Aaron brought up, a lot of uncertainty in terms of inflation and, the value of our dollar and all those things. And, unfortunately, Aaron made me listen to Peter Schiff on Joe Rogan podcast, which was the most terrifying 3 hours I've ever spent in my life walking around my neighborhood. So I
think you mentioned that one to me too, didn't you, Aaron?
I did, because, again, going back, we got to be educated and prepared.
Yeah. I think I literally aged as I was walking around, so, thinking of the places that I could move that are out of the country. But, let's say that, the worst comes to worst and, you're tied to these properties, because this happened in 2008, right? So properties lost a tremendous amount of value, and now all of a sudden so many people are upside down in a property. How do you mitigate that? Or is that even a concern for you when you're, buying a property at retail? And you're getting the spread now, but what happens, if those people, they lose their income and all that? I mean, what's the mitigation there that somebody has to look at from a risk perspective?
Sure. In our market here, there's such a shortage of housing. I'm not overly worried about it. There's somebody else that's going to need that house just as much. And with the numbers that we're talking, we're at high market rents, right? We're number one, we can usually get a little bit more on a lease option than what we can on a regular rental, because the people will pay more for that pride of ownership. So we've got a little extra spread built in. But with that much, even if I had to take that property back and put somebody in there for $200 less a month, which would be significantly below market rent, there's still a spread in there. So it's still, not just covering expenses, it's still profitable. If we needed to do a little workout with somebody for a couple of months, if they were between jobs, we can figure that out. But I honestly don't see a 50 or 60% drop in values like what we had back in 2008. I wish I would have been in the business and doing more then, because the opportunities for acquiring in 2010 and 11 and after that were just phenomenal. And to kind of quote the guy that I learned all of this stuff from, when in the middle of all of that, 10, 11, and 12, when valuations were significantly off, people kept paying. His overall revenue during that entire time period only dropped by about 8%. And then it quickly recovered, and he bought a bunch more properties.
That's awesome. So, I mean, I guess that fuels into the piece where y'all were talking about in the beginning, is the diversification piece. That's why you've got some owner finance and lease option and different types of property, even, mobile home versus single family. And you mentioned something there, I think, in terms of blue collar, which I think is actually a really good idea, because let's say the shit hits the fan here. I mean, the way that it's always come back for America a lot of times is through trying to rise up the middle class, right? So, and bringing in the people that, you know, it might be an infrastructure deal. It might be, you know, green energy. It might be, you know, our natural resources, whatever the case may be. Those are going to be the things most likely that are going to keep us afloat. And those are the kind of jobs, you know, that are going to probably be the most prominent and available. Because I think the big companies right now, if you look at it, they are finding ways to do more with less people. So, you know, and less space, you know, everybody's working from home now. They're figuring, hey, I don't need to go back to these, you know, big giant commercial properties that we've been renting from. So I think you're really onto something there in terms of, you know, the target market that people can really pay close attention to.
I like it, and I like the diversification. I even picked up my first piece of land just a couple of months ago through all of this. I was the JV partner on that one, the investor. I did that one in my IRA, as a matter of fact, self-directed IRA. And another guy that I know well, a good friend, market specifically for land, and I'd never done a land deal before. So he brought one to me in North Carolina, about 16 acres. And we turned around and we sold it to a guy who wants to build on it within a couple of weeks, and had that one cash flowing. And seller financed that one to him. So, yeah. Diversification. What's that?
It'd be terrible if they built a big, beautiful house on that piece of land. And
I know, it'd be horrible, wouldn't it?
That's awesome. So what's on your plate for, you know, the remainder of this year? Like what's your strategy going forward? I mean, obviously these are strange and weird times we're living in. Are you just plotting forward, like, you know, methodically doing what you've been doing, or have you made any sort of sidestep adjustments that, you know, people could look at?
Yes, I've been getting organized is what I've been doing. What was kind of interesting is I found out how much time I was wasting driving around to places that I really didn't need to go to. So it's been a great time for me to focus and get focused. I've gone and done a bunch of additional mentoring stuff. Darren Hardy, I don't know if either of you guys follow him at all. I know Aaron does a little bit.
Yep.
He just recently
Success Magazine, right?
He was a publisher of Success Magazine. I think he took it from almost, you know, unknown all the way up through something very, very good, and it seems like it's kind of fallen off again now that he's not the publisher anymore. But he's publishing a lot of his own stuff now. But he just last week finished up a 6-week program that he called Jumpstart. And it was about identifying your number one goal for the year and making sure that everything that you're working on is aligned with that goal. The Mike Michalowicz, I think it is, that wrote Pumpkin Plan, there was a lot about that too. He talks about only focusing on the prize pumpkin and getting rid of all of the extra stuff. So I've done a lot of that during this time frame, getting rid of, you know, trying to not chase quite so many different projects at one time. As you know, as I mentioned, I got a lot of things going on, and sometimes that's a little bit stressful. So getting that down to focusing on the critical few has really kind of been my my project on myself over the last couple of months. And then revamping some marketing, getting some things ready to go. I see probably over the next year now, because they extended some of those moratoriums on the federally backed loans for up to 12 months now on the forbearance. So what's that, 9 months from now, we're probably going to start to see some things happening on the note side of the business, the non-performing, foreclosures, opportunity for subject twos, and some seller finance deals. So getting ready to tackle that is one of my bigger focuses when we come out of this.
Hey, Chris, give us a little, going back to the mobile home parks and strategy, give our listeners a little bit more color as to what that looks like. How big are these parks? How many units is it you know, how does that work? Is it the land you're involved with, the actual, concrete lots themselves, or is it just the actual homes? Or like, give us a little bit more background and education on that.
Sure. So I work pretty closely with a few park owners. And like I mentioned earlier, you need to have that license in order to sell homes. And some of the owners don't want to go do that. In fact, one of the bigger ones that I'm working with, I just picked up 2 of their parks that I'm representing all the sales in. One's up here in on the west side of Phoenix. The other one's down on the east side of Tucson. And they lost their qualified party. In order to get that license, you have to have a qualified party that takes the brokerage exam that lives in the state that you do business in. And so that's where I came in, and I'm qualified party now for their license, but we're handling all of their private sales and all their park-owned home sales through Piper Capital as the broker. So primarily we deal with those, the individual sales and the park-owned homes. Does that kind of answer your question? I feel like I'm about halfway there.
Yeah.
We do get a lot of inquiries from people looking to purchase mobile home parks. There was a fund out of Washington that I'm drawing a blank on the name right now, came in a few months ago and picked up 4 parks here in the Valley for a total of about $360 million. So those are good sized parks with a lot of upside. Those probably in the 300 to 400 space range. They go all the way down to what you'd think of as a quote unquote trailer park, a single lane right down the middle with a few, older 70s trailers sitting in there at an angle. The ultimate affordable housing, right? Those are in the $300 a month lot rent range, and they're buying homes for a couple $1,000s. The flip side of that, there's been some big players that have come in. Cal-Am is one of them. They've bought several parks here in Arizona that were 55 plus, and with the shortage of affordable housing, they converted those back to an all-age or not restricted community. And there's a whole bunch that goes into that with some zoning and notifications, and they have to give people an opportunity to move. And then they filled those parks up with brand new homes, and they're carrying their own paper. I approached them a couple of years ago to see if I could sell some of their paper for them, and they just had no interest. They had deep enough pockets. They wanted to hold the paper. They were charging like 9% with a $30,000 markup on a brand new home, and if they had to take it back, they were just going to turn right around and do the same thing over again.
Chris, tell us, educate us on the approach to contacting these park owners. What does that look like? How are you doing that? What's in it for them exactly? What problem are you solving for them to, what is that conversation? What's the approach and what's that conversation look like?
We've gone down all kinds of different pathways with that. Everything from skip tracing people and getting them on the phone or sending them an email. But the best one that we've found is just walking in the door at the park and starting to create a relationship with that park manager. You find out what their headaches are, because they're people too. They're more likely to share. Just don't go in on the first week of the month, because that's rent month and they have no time to deal with you, or rent week and they don't have any time to deal with you.
But
you go in between. Right?
It's that whole first week. That whole first week of the month. Yeah,
because you figure it out. They're trying to collect rent from 300 to 400 people all in 1 week, and they've got slow pays and no pays and all of that stuff that they've got to get notices back out to, 10-day pay or quits and all of that stuff. So they're pretty busy in that first week of the month. But if you go in there and you just got to build a relationship with them. It really is a relationship business, and you build up a good enough relationship, and then the owners come into town, and the owners, the park manager wants you to meet the owner because they think that the manager thinks that I can help them out. And so then I get the intro to the owner, and we may take over sales in the park completely, or we may end up buying something in the park, because most of the owners know that their business is property management and running the park and collecting that rent. They don't want to deal with the rehabs. They don't want to deal with taking homes back. They don't want to have a full crew of rehabbers that they're paying that overhead on. when they don't necessarily need them every month. And so if they can work with somebody like me, that they have a home that comes back, they give me a call, say, we had this 1984 double wide come back and it needs a lot of work. Is this something you'd be interested in? And I would turn that over to one of the crews that I have and, go out and rehab that home and either sell it for cash or sell it on seller financing. And sometimes the park will work with me on lot rent for a couple of months if I'm doing that because they don't have to deal with it.
What are those price points look like? What's the average rehab amount? And then what's the after repair value that you're able to get from that? And then, and then followed by so 3 parts. Third part would be what's the average monthly rent that you're getting on that at that point, or lease option amount?
Sure. We stick to the monthly affordability. Okay. So, if it's the simple question is it depends, or the simple answer is it depends, right? Because it's kind of a crazy world. You can have the exact same home in this park on the west side of the street as you do on this park on the east side of the street, and they could vary as much in value by, you could have one that's worth twice as much as the other.
Why is that?
It has to do with the amenities in the park.
Okay.
A lot. It has to do with the lot rent. The higher the lot rent, the lower the affordability of the home, the less money they have to actually purchase the home. So if you're working with a park that's got an $800 a month lot rent, you're not going to be able to go do a $500-600 a month, whether it's a loan payment or a lease option payment. You're going to be getting into a $1,400-1,500 a month cost of living.
And they can't do it.
Now they can go get something out, not in a park, which is going to be more desirable for them most of the time. So lot rents range anywhere. They've been on the rise, which has driven a huge demand for park buyers here in Arizona. There's people looking for parks everywhere, but it's driven the cap rates down a little bit. Like I mentioned before, the buy a couple of months ago was $360 million. I think it worked out to be right around a 10 cap, and mobile home parks are typically into the double digits decently. And they did that on an upside. That was an upside buy. They're looking at increasing rents and probably improving the parks. So lot rents right now are $500 to $800. I would say $550 to $700 is probably the most common in a decent park right now. And home values, again, they're all the way across the board. Late 70s homes, a couple of grand, to brand new ones, you're looking at 100.
Okay.
So there's a sweet spot right now that's about 10 to 20 years old. So 90 to about 2010 in the used market are pretty highly desirable. And we sell a lot of those in the 25 to 50 range.
How much are you putting into those?
To rehab them?
Yeah.
As little as possible. 5 to 10.
Okay.
Usually.
Okay.
And those deals still cash flow, like with that kind of lot rent? That's what I don't know.
Yeah, you got to watch the lot rent because it does affect the affordability. A $25,000 home, you're probably going to be able to cash flow that one at about somewhere between $300 and $400 a month on 8 to 10 years. So you just got to watch. You can't put somebody in there because you got to be a little conscious of the park increasing the lot rent too. So even though our payment might be fixed, they might have an increase in cost of living. So I'm not going to put somebody into that's just barely hitting the ability to pay limit because they might have a $50, $60 a month lot rent increase next year and it pushes them out of that affordability range. So with everything, just a little business common sense with what we're doing.
So then to recap, just so I can restate what I'm hearing you say is it starts with building a relationship kind of with the park manager, then escalates to the park owner. You're feeling a need to help that, they want to focus on collecting their existing rents and managing the park, the amenities, and, just the overall upkeep from a property management standpoint. You come in, solve the need for, vacancies, rehabs that are needed, resells that are needed so they can get back to, again, collect, rinse and repeating, collecting the rents, managing the property, managing the park overall. And then from there, you're looking at, okay, I got to monitor the lot rent, and then I got to find this sweet spot where it's not too old, but not too new, so anything, anywhere from 10 to 30 years old on the actual, home itself, minimal rehab, cash flow, 300. Did I kind of encompass that?
You did a lot better job at tying a bow around that than what I did.
And then give me, help bring us home on what the numbers look like from a waterfall on, I purchase it at X, I lease option it at X, I get X number down payment, and, kind of break down that, if you will. So we have an understanding of as much as a line item as possible.
Sure. If I'm doing a rehab on one, I'd like to be all in around 50% of what I can sell it for on paper.
Okay.
So if I'm going to sell it for 30, I'd like to be into it for no more than 15 when I'm done. And I'm going to sell that on a 12% note if I do a seller finance.
Okay.
So your returns on that are pretty darn good. Your risk level is them taking off, right? Because now I have a large liability on the lot rent. So you always have to keep that in the back of your head, that it's not like a stick frame house when somebody leaves, 90 days later, the only thing you've really accumulated as far as expenses go, could be some taxes you might have to pay, or if you do have leverage on it, of course, you're going to accumulate some payments there. So you just got to keep that in mind.
Give us the option terms. I got the 12% note, but give me the option terms.
The option terms, they're going to vary a lot depending on the property itself. I'm still looking for that $400 a month, and I'd like to have $2,500 for move-in on a $25,000 house, so about 10%. And then part of that would be, option fee. Part of that would be, refundable cleaning deposit, because it would still be considered a rental.
Are you applying any of the monthly payment towards the future option period? So like $25 or $50 a month, they pay on time. Are they accumulating any sort of credit? Are they 7, 8, 10-year? What is the option time frame? And kind of give me that too.
Yeah, on the lower dollar stuff, I do a 7-year option.
Okay.
On stick frame real estate in Arizona, I do 10. Give them a little bit longer to get their affairs in order, so they can purchase the property later. What was your other question there?
Are you applying any credits, monthly
credits? Not if I don't have to.
Is that even brought up? Do they even know to ask?
That's why I don't put it into the contracts unless it's asked for.
Okay.
If they're a well-qualified person and I feel really good about them, I'm not going to turn them away because they're insisting on a rent credit. Okay. So lower dollar stuff, maybe $25 a month for every payment that's made on time. And then only applied if they make overall 90% of their payments on time for the entire term. And it's really an incentive program. It's not a rent credit, because you got to watch your construed sale stuff. When you start doing anything applied towards purchase price in the lease, you could be triggering something you don't want to play around with.
Okay. All right, that's helpful. Ben, do you have any other clarifying questions on that? I
think that's exactly helpful. What a lot of people wonder about is, all right, where do I find the deal? And then how the hell do I even structure this thing to make it profitable? So you just laid out some pretty good stuff there. Chris, if people want to connect with you, what's the best way to do that?
Phone or email. Email, I'll probably get back to you within a couple of days. You're going to post my contact info on here. Or do you want me to give it out?
You can give it, and you do whatever you want, brother. If you want
All
us to
right.
post
So,
it,
yeah, somebody can send me an email, chris@pipercapitalholdings.com. Piper like the airplane. It's actually my daughter's name. We named the company after her. And then Capital Holdings with an S. And my cell phone number is 480-862-3205. If you call me at some crazy hour of the night, I'm probably not going to answer, but most of the rest of the time I try.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show. I love everything that you shared, the importance of diversification, different types of assets, and all that. So we appreciate your time, as always, brother.
I appreciate you guys having me on. It's been fun. This is the first one I've done, so wasn't quite sure what to expect, but it went really well.
Well, as always, we appreciate it. Thanks for your support over the years, and it's cool. We'll have to have you do another panel at our next hopefully live Noteworthy event that we are looking at for end of February next year. Back in Anaheim, Orange County, California area. So hopefully things are back to a little bit of normality and stuff. But I think it's good. I think hopefully everybody got a lot of value on this and the opportunity of looking. I get questions all the time, like people interested in looking at mobile home parks and what that opportunity looks like. I think there's a lot of, again, misinformation out there, people doing seminars on it that don't know what the hell they're talking about, or oversimplifying it or overstating that, it's super easy. I mean, at the end of the day, everything we do in this business consists of hard work and consistency, having a good group or mentor, like you learned this from another mentor here locally that's done 2,000 plus transactions. I did that. Ben's done that, continues to do that as well. And so I think those are all critical things. I think at the end of the day, to put a nice little bow on it, as you said earlier, pick what works best for you. Invest in what you know. If you don't know it, go get the specialized knowledge and experience to do it, and just stay consistent and focused on it. I was talking to Ben the other day. We had on Sherman Arnowitz. We were talking about junior liens, and I have a great deal of experience in that. Ben does not. And so after the call, after the show, we had a brief call on it, and I was like, man, when those things come on again, I want to double, triple down on that. And I was like, you want to do that? And again, going back to invest in what you know. And his response was, well, I need some more information. It sounds great. And I'd like to do it, but, I need some more information and, to get involved in it. So I think that same thing applies to anything we do.
Yeah, you and I have talked about the junior lien stuff before too. I'm in the same boat as Ben. I'm really, really intrigued, but I don't know near enough. Yeah. There's some other avenues that I'd like to consider with those as well, because anything that you had to take back would make an awesome subject too for a long-term lease option going forward. But, with the mobile home park stuff, two things have come up recently. Number one, I'm working or connected with a couple out of the Bay Area that's trying to buy a mobile home park on a 1031 exchange.
Interesting.
Which is interesting. And they brought something up. I just talked to him yesterday that instead of doing a standard business loan, 20 to 25% down, they contacted the Small Business Association, and they're going to be able to get an SBA loan to buy a mobile home park with only 10% down. And actually, take that back. It can't be a mobile home park. They won't do that, but they will do an RV park where you've got at least 51% in transitional or shorter term transactions.
Okay.
So that was one that kind of dropped out of the sky that I hadn't heard of before. And if there's anybody that wants to, maybe get their toes wet in it, one of those park owners that I know here in town, I'm good friends with them, they buy mobile home parks with funds. They've got SEC registered funds,
sure,
and they're getting ready to open their second one. I think their minimum is pretty small. It's only like $25K.
Yeah, I've got a good buddy. used to be the president of NSDREI, which is one of the RIA clubs in Southern California and San Diego County. And Eric Zaragoza is his name. They run a mobile home fund. I just process some paperwork. They have a number of self-directed IRA investors that invest into that. But, RV park's good. My family on my wife's side, they have a bunch of RV parks and hotels, restaurants. The RV parks have saved their bacon. That's the one thing, because people are still, because there's no international travel, they're traveling domestically in their motorhomes, and motorhome sales have been skyrocketing.
They're way up.
You couldn't give those dang things away. Like my grandfather, when my grandmother passed away, they had a mobile home park. He called the bank and told them to come pick it up. My wife passed. I don't want it. He had a HELOC, because a lot of what those retirees do is their home is paid off. They go get a HELOC and go buy a motorhome, and pay that $500 a month, which their Social Security can cover. And when she passed, he was like, called Bank of America. He's like, pick up the dang thing, which they did. But, the point is, though, I remember driving back earlier this year before COVID hit, and they were like, I was looking at all these RV or mobile home, RV sales places, dealerships. And I was like, these things are going to go out of business. And now they're thriving.
Yeah, they're doing great. They're doing great. I was kind of blown away when I heard that. My brother-in-law picked one up a couple of years ago and planned on doing a little traveling around the country with it. And he just sold it. And he said he had 3 cash offers. All of them wanted to give him money to hold it so they could get it. And he sold it for everything that he had into it, plus his repairs and the holding costs that he had for storing it over those couple of years. So, it was pretty wild.
When there comes turbulence and uncertainty, there also creates opportunity and things for other things for us to do. So we really appreciate your time, Chris, your perspective, your experience and what you're doing. Again, Chris at pipercapitalholdings.com. Check him out. And if you want to get connected with him, learn more about that business. And we appreciate it. So what do we got coming up next on the docket, Ben, as far as events and stuff to let everybody know?
Yeah, we have the virtual summit coming up in September. We'll put those details in the show notes. And then obviously you can also subscribe to the Noteworthy newsletter at www.notetools.com/newsletter. So you can check that out. We'll have Chris has some information in the newsletter as well that he helps us with, and some other great contributors. So if you want to learn more about raising capital, finding deals, buying notes, junior liens, we got a bunch of great contributions coming up in the coming months that are already on the editorial calendar. So make sure you pick up your subscription. And that is it for the show today. So we appreciate you tuning in. Remember to share the show. Leave us a review. 5 stars would be awesome. If you can't, don't leave it. But we'll try to continue to put these out, bring you guys a lot of value, and help you any way we can. So thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you on the next show.
Bye for now. Thanks, everyone.
Bye, guys. Thank you.